At the furthest reaches of the solar dominion, where the influence of the home star begins to fray into the velvet dark, the Sun is no longer a sovereign of heat and light. It is merely a particularly brilliant spark, one among billions, stripped of its warmth and reduced to a singular piercing point of white fire in a sky of infinite black. In this desolate expanse, the solar wind, a constant stream of charged particles that defines the boundaries of our celestial home, begins to falter. It meets the cold, encroaching pressure of the interstellar medium, creating a turbulent and invisible frontier known as the heliopause. This is the cosmic shoreline, the threshold where the breath of our sun finally gives way to the vast ancient winds of the galaxy. Across this silent boundary, a solitary wanderer approaches. It does not enter with the circular grace of the planets, those faithful children of the sun that have traced their predictable, elliptical paths for 4.6 billion years. Instead, this object moves with a defiant straightness, a trajectory that ignores the local geometry of the system it has just invaded. It is a true stranger, a fragment of a world that never knew the light of our star. Its passage through the heliopause is unmarked by fire or sound, for in the vacuum there is no medium to carry the scream of its arrival. It simply is, a dark monolith piercing the veil of the solar system at a speed that mocks the gravity of the inner worlds. This object, designated as the 3i Atlas visitor, is more than a mere remnant of rock and ice. It is a letter cast into the dark, a message of mass and velocity travelling through the vacuum for millions of years. It carries no ink, no parchment, and no language that can be read by the eyes alone. Instead, its message is written in its very existence, in the specific curve of its path, the composition of its skin, and the momentum it carries from a birthplace located light years across the void. It is a silent missive from a sun that may have long since cooled, a testament to a history that unfolded in a corner of the heavens we have never seen. The scale of the journey undertaken by this wanderer is a challenge to the human sense of time. To cross the distances between stars is to endure a loneliness that is absolute. For eons, the object has drifted through the interstellar void, a place where the density of matter is so low that atoms are separated by vast stretches of nothingness. In this abyss, the passage of 1,000,000 years is but a heartbeat, and the movement of the object is a slow, steady crawl across a canvas of infinite scale. It has survived the death of stars and the collision of galaxies, a tiny, resilient fragment of a larger story that began in the deep reaches of the Perseus Arm. As it crosses the threshold of our system, the object enters a realm of ghosts. The outer reaches are populated by the remnants of our own birth, the icy bodies of the Oort cloud and the Kuiper belt, but the 3i Atlas object is fundamentally different. It does not belong to the family of the sun. It is a piece of a different puzzle, a fragment of a foreign architecture. Its movement is hyperbolic, a mathematical proof of its alien origin. It does not seek an orbit, it seeks only the exit, its path a straight line that will eventually carry it back into the dark from which it emerged. The silence of the interstellar void is not the silence of a quiet room, but the silence of a universe that does not yet know we exist. To the vacuum, this object is merely a calculation of mass and momentum, a cold piece of debris following the dictates of physics. Yet, to those who watch from the third planet, it is a miracle of timing, that this letter, sent from a distant star millions of years ago, should stumble into the gravity of our small corner of the heavens at the exact moment we possess the technology to see it, is a coincidence of staggering proportions. The stranger carries with it the cold of the deep spaces, a temperature that has not changed since it was cast out from its home. Its surface is a record of its travels, scarred by the impact of cosmic rays and the slow erosion of the interstellar wind. It is a relic of a lost epoch, a piece of a world that existed before the first ancestors of humanity walked the earth. In its defiant straightness, it reminds us of the fragility of our own connection to the cosmos. We are a species bound to a single star, living on a world that is a tiny island in a vast and indifferent sea. The The 3i Atlas object is a reminder that the dark is not empty. It is filled with the debris of 1 billion histories, the shattered remains of solar systems and the wandering fragments of broken worlds. Each of these objects is a letter, a message sent into the future with no guarantee of a reader. They are the artifacts of a galaxy that is constantly recycling itself, turning the death of one star into the birth of another. In reading this cosmic letter, we are forced to confront the true scale of our existence, a scale measured not in years or miles, but in the slow, inevitable movement of matter across the void. As the object moves deeper into our system, the sun begins to exert its influence. The gravity of the home star pulls at the stranger, attempting to bend its path, to claim it as its own. But the velocity of the 3i Atlas visitor is too great. It will not be captured. It will pass through the inner sanctum of the planets, a fleeting visitor that leaves as quickly as it arrived. It is a reminder that we are not the only ones carving a history into the dark, and that the universe is far larger, far older, and far more complex than our small minds can easily grasp. The letter has arrived, and though it carries no words, its presence is a profound testament to the shared existence of all things in the vast, silent theatre of the stars. High atop the volcanic shield of Mauna Loa, the air is a thin, biting veil stripped of the moisture and heat of the Pacific below. The night is crisp, the stars undimmed by the breath of the lower atmosphere, appearing as steady, unblinking diamonds set against the absolute black. On these basaltic slopes, the mechanical sentinels of humanity wait in a silence broken only by the low hum of cooling fans and the occasional groan of a rotating dome. The asteroid terrestrial impact last alert system, known to the watchers as Atlas, rests within its white shells, its glass eyes wide and hungry, drinking in the photons that have travelled across the light years to reach this specific patch of Hawaiian soil. The telescopes move with a precision that belies their massive weight, sweeping the heavens in a relentless survey of the dark. They are the world's early warning system, designed to catch the subtle shift of a pixel that might signal an approaching disaster. Thousands of images are captured every hour, each a snapshot of a different sector of the celestial sphere, each containing millions of points of light that must be catalogued, compared, and verified. In the late hours of a night in 2024, a specific sequence of frames arrives at the processing centre, carrying within it a ghost that refuses to be ignored. Among the static fields of distant galaxies and the familiar drift of local asteroids, a single point of light is caught in motion. It is small and faint, a mere spark against the void, but its behaviour is immediately recognised as anomalous. As the data cascades through the cooling systems, the heat generated by the silicon processors is whisked away by circulating liquids, a mechanical heartbeat in the silence of the mountain. The algorithms begin their work, stripping away the known stars and the catalogued debris of the solar system. What remains is a single, defiant streak of light that moves with a speed that mocks the local architecture of the heavens. The initial calculations are met with a profound, professional skepticism. The velocity of the object is clocked at over 40 kilometers per second. To the human mind, this is a number. To the physicist, it is a revelation. This is a speed that defies the gravitational grip of the sun. For an object to be bound to our home star at this distance, it must move within a specific, predictable range of velocities. If it moves too slowly, it falls toward the fiery centre. If it moves at the correct pace, it maintains the elegant closed loop of an orbit. But 40 kilometers per second is a declaration of independence. It is a velocity that exceeds the escape speed required to break free from the solar system's gravitational well forever. The realization ripples through the small circle of watchers as the software confirms the trajectory. This spark of light is not a resident of this place. The sun, for all its massive influence, for all its power to hold the giant planets in their tracks, is not strong enough to tether this stranger. The object is falling through our system like a stone dropped through a silk curtain. its momentum far too great to be redirected into a permanent home. It is a visitor from the interstellar deep, the third of its kind ever witnessed by human eyes, and it is moving through our neighbourhood with the terrifying indifference of a projectile. The photons that strike the silicon wafers of the Atlas cameras carry the signature of a journey that began millions of years ago. Each particle of light, converted into a tiny pulse of electricity, tells a story of an origin far beyond the Oort cloud. The cooling systems hum more urgently now, keeping the sensors at a temperature near absolute zero to ensure that the thermal noise of the Earth does not drown out the faint cold signal of the intruder. The designation 3I Atlas is etched into the digital records, marking the moment that the abstract possibility of another interstellar visitor became a physical reality. There is a sense of awe that transcends the mathematics of the discovery. To see an object moving at 40 kilometers per second is to witness the true scale of galactic dynamics. It means this mass was once part of a different story, perhaps ejected from a binary star system, or hurled into the void by the death of a distant sun. It has been travelling through the absolute zero of the interstellar medium for eons, and by a miracle of timing, it has intersected the narrow window of our observation. The watchers on the mountain are no longer just technicians. They are the first witnesses to a message from the galaxy, a piece of the infinite that has finally come within reach. The telescopes continue to track the spark, their mirrors adjusted with micromillimeter precision to follow its rapid transit across the constellations. The data begins to build a picture of a trajectory that is not a closed circle, but an open, hyperbolic curve, a path that points back toward the dense star fields of the Perseus Arm. The night on Mauna Loa remains cold and still, but within the glowing screens of the control rooms, the universe has suddenly become much larger. The glass eyes have seen something that does not belong to the sun, a fragment of a foreign world that is merely passing through, reminding those who look up that the solar system is not a fortress, but a crossroads in a very busy and ancient galaxy. This stranger, this 3I Atlas object, carries the weight of an entire system's history in its velocity. It is a reminder that the space between the stars is not a barrier, but a bridge, and that occasionally the bridge is crossed. As the sun begins to rise over the Pacific, washing out the faint light of the intruder, the data remains, a permanent record of a fleeting encounter. The letter has been intercepted, the speed has been measured, and the realization has taken hold. We are currently playing host to a traveller from the deep, a wanderer that will never return to the dark from which it came, without first leaving its mark on the collective mind of humanity. The geometry of the heavens is usually a study in repetition, a symphony of closed loops and predictable returns. From the smallest moon to the largest gas giant, the inhabitants of the solar system are bound by the invisible tethers of gravity to trace elliptical paths, cycles that have repeated for billions of years. But the geometry of the 3I Atlas object is a radical departure from this celestial order. It moves not in a circle or an ellipse, but along an extreme hyperbolic trajectory, a path that resembles an open-ended arc, a curve that approaches the sun from the infinite dark and will eventually return to it, never to be seen again. This is the geometry of the fugitive, the mathematical signature of an object that is merely passing through our world on its way to somewhere else. At the heart of this trajectory lies a single, defining value, the orbital eccentricity. In the mechanics of the cosmos, an eccentricity of 0 represents a perfect circle, while values between 0 and 1 describe the elongated ellipses of the planets and most comets. A value of exactly 1 represents a parabola, the threshold of escape. The 3I Atlas object possesses an eccentricity of 1.25. This number is a declaration of total exile. It signifies that the object possesses far too much kinetic energy for the sun to ever capture it. The sun's immense gravitational well, which holds the mighty Jupiter and the distant Neptune in their tracks, is for this stranger nothing more than a momentary bend in the road. An eccentricity of 1.25 is the proof that this object was born under the light of a different sun, and that its journey through our system is a singular, non-repeating event. To understand the origin of this traveller, astronomers project its path backward through the celestial sphere, reversing the clock on its motion to see where it emerged from the interstellar gloom. The line stretches away from our Sun, piercing the heliopause and extending into the vast, empty reaches of the galactic disk. It points toward the Perseus Arm, one of the great spiral structures of the Milky Way, a dense forest of stars and nebulae located thousands of light-years away. Within that distant thicket of light, among the blue giants and the red dwarfs of a foreign sector of the galaxy, this object was forged. Perhaps it was a fragment of a planetesimal shattered in a collision, or a remnant of a solar system's birth, hurled into the void by the gravitational influence of a passing star. It has spent eons crossing the gulf between the Perseus Arm and our own local neighbourhood, a silent witness to the slow rotation of the galaxy itself. The cold mathematics of this trajectory provide a certainty that transcends visual observation. By measuring the angle of its approach and the staggering speed of its transit, researchers have confirmed that this is the third interstellar object ever detected within our borders. It follows in the footsteps of two previous strangers that challenged our understanding of the universe. The first was the cigar-shaped Wanderer, a dark and tumbling monolith that arrived in 2017 and vanished as quickly as it appeared, leaving behind a trail of unanswered questions. The second was the Snowy Comet, a more familiar-looking visitor that arrived in 2019, sporting a tail of gas and dust that allowed us to taste the chemistry of a distant star system. Now the 3i Atlas object stands as the third eye into the deep, a new data point in a growing catalogue of cosmic intruders. The existence of these three objects suggests that the space between the stars is far more crowded than we once believed. If we have seen three such visitors in less than a decade, the mathematical implication is that millions of these interstellar messengers are currently drifting through the solar system, most of them too small or too dark for our current telescopes to find. The 3i Atlas object is simply the one that happened to cross our path at the right moment, a representative of a vast, invisible population of galactic debris. Each one is a piece of a different puzzle, a fragment of a world that we will never visit, carrying the secrets of its distant home in the very shape of its flight. As the object reaches its closest point to our Sun, the hyperbolic curve is at its most extreme. The Sun's gravity tugs at the mass, attempting to pull it into a permanent embrace, but the momentum of the stranger is too great. It swings around the fiery heart of our system with a grace that is both beautiful and terrifying, its velocity increasing as it dives into the solar gravity well and then flinging it outward like a stone from a sling. There is no possibility of a return trip. The mathematics are absolute. The energy of its motion is greater than the gravitational potential of the Sun. Once it clears the inner planets, it will begin its long climb back into the dark, its speed gradually slowing but never dropping below the threshold of escape. This journey is a testament to the sheer scale of the vacuum. To move from the Perseus Arm to our Sun is a feat of endurance that dwarfs the entire history of life on Earth. While empires rose and fell, while the first cells learned to breathe oxygen, and while the continents drifted across the face of our planet, this object was falling through the silence. It has travelled through the absolute zero of the void, untouched by the light of any star for millions of years, until it finally stumbled into the glow of our own. The path it takes is a bridge across time as much as space, a physical link between our small, sun-drenched world and the ancient, cold heart of the galaxy. The 3i Atlas object remains a mystery, but its trajectory is a solved equation. It is a visitor from the deep, a stranger with an eccentricity of 1.25 that marks it as a permanent exile from our system. As it begins its departure, tracing the second half of its hyperbolic arc, it leaves us with the knowledge that we are part of a much larger theatre. The cold mathematics of its flight have opened our eyes to the reality of the interstellar highway, a place where the third confirmed messenger has just passed by, reminding us that the story of our solar system is only one small chapter in the epic narrative of the Milky Way. The path backward leads to the stars of the Perseus Arm, but the path forward leads back into the infinite, where the stranger will once again become a ghost in the dark. as the 3i Atlas object accelerated toward the heart of our solar system, reaching the point of its closest approach known as perihelion. It entered a region of space where the sun's influence is no longer a gentle suggestion, but a violent, scouring force. At this proximity, the solar furnace pours out a relentless torrent of radiation and charged particles, a thermal hammer capable of stripping the skin from any celestial body. Astronomers around the globe and those commanding instruments in high Earth orbit turn their sensors toward the intruder, fully expecting to witness the birth of a brilliant coma. According to the established laws of cometary physics, an object of this size, having spent eons in the absolute zero of the interstellar void, should have reacted spectacularly to the sudden intrusion of solar heat. In our own neighbourhood, the icy denizens of the Kuiper Belt and the Oort cloud are fragile, weeping things. When they fall toward the sun, they are known as dirty snowballs, composed of volatile ices, water, carbon monoxide and methane, interspersed with primordial dust. As they cross the frost line, the solar heat penetrates their porous surfaces, causing the buried ices to sublimate directly into gas. This internal pressure builds until it erupts in geysers, flinging dust and vapour into the vacuum to create a shimmering coma and a tail that can stretch for millions of kilometres. These are the messy, weeping comets of our home system, shedding their substance like tears as they succumb to the sun's embrace. Yet, as the 3i Atlas object plunged through the inner solar circle, there was only a profound and unsettling silence. The expected plumes of gas never materialised. The telescopes capable of detecting even the faintest shimmer of a dust grain saw nothing but a sharp, clean point of light. There was no shroud of vapour to soften its edges, no trailing ghost of a tail to mark its passage. This total absence of outgassing presented a physical paradox. The object was being roasted by a star, yet it refused to bleed. It remained inert, a stoic monolith that seemed entirely indifferent to the thermal onslaught of the sun. This lack of activity suggests a physical nature that is fundamentally alien to the bodies we have studied for centuries. To remain so clean, under the glare of perihelion, the surface of the Wanderer must be composed of something far more resilient than the ices of our local comets. One hypothesis suggests an armoured hull of dense hydrogen ice, a substance theorised to exist in the coldest, darkest cores of giant molecular clouds. Such a material would be incredibly stable, possessing a thermal conductivity and a structural density that would allow it to absorb the sun's energy without the chaotic eruptions seen in ordinary comets. Alternatively, the object might be encased in a thick metallic crust or a layer of radiation-hardened carbon, a dark and impenetrable shell forged in the high-pressure environment of a distant planetary birth. The contrast between this visitor and the inhabitants of our own system is stark. Where our local comets are porous and fragile, this stranger appears solid and impenetrable. It does not yield. It does not shed its history into the solar wind. This clean nature implies a history of extreme endurance. To survive the journey across the interstellar gulf, the object had to withstand the constant bombardment of cosmic rays and the erosive power of the interstellar medium for millions of years. This process may have baked its outer layers into a ceramic-like shield, stripping away any loose volatiles long before it ever reached the vicinity of our sun. The observers watching the data feeds were met with a sense of eerie perfection. The light curve of the object, the way it reflected the sun's rays, remained steady and sharp, indicating a surface that was not being obscured by a rising mist of dust. This was not the behaviour of a natural rock as we understand it. Even the most solid asteroids in our system often show some small degree of thermal fracturing or dust release when subjected to such rapid heating. The 3i Atlas object, however, moved as if it were a single cohesive unit, an armoured vessel of unknown composition navigating the solar tides. This physical stoicism forces a re-evaluation of what constitutes a celestial body. We are used to the dirty physics of our own system, where everything is in a state of constant decay and shedding. To encounter an object that remains pristine while passing through the fire is to realise that the galaxy produces architectures of matter that we have yet to categorise. Is it a shard of a dead planet's core, a piece of exotic ice from a world without a sun, or something even more unusual? The absence of a coma is not merely a missing feature. It is a positive piece of evidence, a clue that points toward a composition that is dense, durable, and perhaps even manufactured by processes we cannot yet replicate. As it rounded the sun and began its climb back toward the outer reaches, the object left the scientific community in a state of quiet wonder. It had passed through the ultimate test of the solar furnace and emerged unchanged, its clean silhouette, a testament to its alien origins. It was a stranger that refused to speak in the language of gas and dust, a silent traveller that carried its secrets beneath an unyielding skin. The mystery of its physical nature remained intact, a dark riddle wrapped in a hull of unknown material, moving away from the light with the same defiant silence it had maintained since its arrival. The sun had tried to unmask the visitor, but the visitor had kept its veil, proving that some letters are sealed with more than just distance. They are protected by the very substance of their being. Far beyond the orbit of the Moon, stationed at the second Lagrange point where the gravitational tugs of the Earth and Sun reach a delicate equilibrium, the James Webb Space Telescope turned its massive golden eye toward the receding stranger. This instrument, a masterpiece of human engineering designed to peer into the dawn of time, was now tasked with dissecting the immediate present. Its primary mirror, composed of 18 hexagonal segments, plated in a thin layer of gold, captured the infrared whispers of the 3i Atlas object as it began its long climb away from the solar fire. The data that streamed back across the vacuum was not a simple confirmation of a rock in flight. It was a complex, chaotic narrative of a body in deep distress. The first revelation provided by the telescope concerned the object's rotation. Most celestial bodies possess a stable spin, a rhythmic pirouette around a fixed axis that produces a predictable variation in reflected light. The 3i Atlas visitor, however, exhibited a peculiar tumbling motion. Its light curve, the record of its brightness over time, was a jagged and irregular landscape. It did not merely rotate, it pitched and yawed with a chaotic intensity that spoke of a violent history. This was the movement of a body that had been subjected to a catastrophic event, perhaps a near miss with a black hole or a shattering collision within its parent system millions of years ago. It moved through the void like a wounded soldier stumbling through the dark, its orientation constantly shifting in a way that suggested it had never found its balance after being cast out into the interstellar night. But as the astrophysicists processed the positional data, a far more disturbing anomaly emerged. According to the iron laws of celestial mechanics, an object moving away from the sun should experience a predictable deceleration. The sun's immense gravitational well acts as a tether, pulling back on the departing mass and slowing its flight as it climbs against the slope of space-time. Yet, the 3i Atlas object was not slowing down as the equations demanded. Instead, it was gaining speed. It was experiencing a subtle but measurable non-gravitational acceleration, a phenomenon where the object moved as if nudged by an invisible hand. In the study of local comets, such acceleration is common and easily explained. As the sun heats the icy core, the resulting jets of gas act like small rocket engines, pushing the comet forward or sideways. But the 3i Atlas object had already been proven clean. There were no jets, no plumes of vapour, and no trailing shroud of dust to account for this extra momentum. The telescope's sensitive infrared cameras confirmed that the space around the object remained a pristine vacuum. There was no visible exhaust to justify this surge in velocity, yet the object continued to move faster than gravity alone could allow. It was defying the standard models of how a dead piece of rock is supposed to behave in the presence of a star. This invisible push was not a sudden burst, but a steady, persistent pressure that seemed to increase as the object moved further into the cold. To the observers on Earth, it appeared as if the stranger was surfing on an unseen wave, or perhaps responding to the pressure of the solar wind in a way that defied its calculated mass. The acceleration was 15% stronger than the deviation observed in the first interstellar visitor years prior, a discrepancy that pushed the boundaries of known physics. It suggested that the object was either far less dense than its size implied, perhaps a hollow shell or a gossamer-thin structure, or that it was interacting with the sun's radiation in a manner that was entirely unprecedented. The implications of this movement were profound. If the object were a natural fragment of a world, its behaviour suggested a composition so light and airy that it could be propelled by the mere pressure of sunlight, a concept known as a solar sail. This would require the object to be incredibly thin, a cosmic leaf drifting on the light of the stars. However, the tumbling motion contradicted this, as a thin sheet would likely be shredded or stabilised by such forces. The conflict between the chaotic spin and the steady acceleration created a scientific tension that could not be easily resolved. The 3i Atlas visitor was moving like a machine designed for the void, yet it appeared as a jagged, light-swallowing monolith. As the James Webb Space Telescope continued its vigil, the gap between the predicted gravitational path and the actual trajectory of the object grew wider. This was not a measurement error, it was a physical reality. The object was making its exit with a purposeful speed, a final flourish of defiance against the star that had tried to claim it. The invisible hand remained a mystery, a ghost in the machine of the cosmos that challenged the very foundations of how we categorize the contents of the universe. We were watching an object that refused to be a mere passenger in the solar system, a traveller that seemed to possess its own secret source of momentum. The data provided by the Golden Eye turned the 3i Atlas object from a curiosity into a crisis of understanding. It was no longer just a rock from another star, it was a challenge to the clockwork universe of Newton and Kepler. It reminded the watchers that our understanding of motion and mass is based on the local neighbourhood, a small and perhaps unrepresentative sample of the wider galaxy. Out in the deep, among the stars of the Perseus Arm and beyond, there are forces and forms of matter that do not play by our rules. The tumbling, accelerating stranger was a herald of this larger, stranger reality, a message written in the language of anomalous motion, telling us that the dark is full of things we have yet to name, moving in ways we have yet to comprehend. The departure of the 3i Atlas object was not a passive surrender to the laws of inertia. As it moved further into the cold outskirts of the solar system, the deviation from its predicted gravitational path became an undeniable mathematical crisis. The non-gravitational acceleration was not merely a subtle drift, it was 15% more intense than the anomaly recorded during the transit of the first interstellar wanderer years earlier. This specific value, 15%, acted as a catalyst for a fierce scientific tension that rippled through the ivory towers of academia. In the halls of research institutions from Cambridge to Tokyo, the data was scrutinised with a fervour bordering on desperation, for it suggested that our understanding of the relationship between mass and light was incomplete, or that the object itself was far more complex than a mere shard of cosmic debris. To move a mass the size of a skyscraper without the visible ejection of matter requires a force that defies the standard toolkit of the planetary scientist. The most conservative explanation turned toward the concept of radiation pressure, the idea of a sail catching a wind made of light. In this scenario, the relentless stream of photons flowing from the sun strikes the surface of the object, transferring a tiny amount of momentum with every collision. For a typical asteroid, this force is negligible, far too weak to alter a trajectory in any meaningful way. However, if the 3i Atlas object possessed an extreme surface-to-mass ratio, if it were as thin and light as a gossamer sheet despite its towering dimensions, the solar wind could act as a propellant. This would transform the stranger into a natural solar sail, a cosmic leaf, blown across the void by the breath of stars. Yet, the chaotic, tumbling motion of the object contradicted the stability required for such a sail to function, creating a paradox that left researchers grasping for alternatives. The tension deepened as some theorists proposed the existence of internal mechanisms hidden beneath that unyielding, clean hull. They spoke of a core shifting its weight in the dark, a redistribution of mass that could alter the object's centre of gravity, and, consequently, its interaction with the solar gravitational field. While such a phenomenon is unheard of in natural geology, it provided a mathematical fit for the jagged light curve and the anomalous acceleration. The imagery of an internal heart, perhaps a shifting reservoir of exotic fluids or a mechanical core responding to the changing thermal environment, began to haunt the fringes of the debate. It suggested an object that was not a passive passenger of physics, but a participant in its own movement, responding to the sun's presence with a calculated adjustment of its own internal state. Others sought refuge in the realm of exotic chemistry, suggesting that the 15% increase in acceleration was the result of invisible outgassing. If the object were composed of pure hydrogen ice, the sublimation of this material into gas would be nearly impossible to detect with current infrared sensors. The hydrogen would bleed into the vacuum as a transparent ghost, providing a steady thrust without the telltale shimmer of a cometary tail. This hypothesis preserved the natural origin of the object, but required the existence of hydrogen icebergs, a form of matter that has never been observed and whose existence would imply a birthplace in the coldest, most light-starved pockets of the galaxy. The scientific community found itself divided between two equally staggering possibilities. Either the universe is filled with exotic, invisible forms of matter that we have never seen, or we were witnessing the passage of a structure that was not entirely natural. This debate was not merely about numbers, it was a struggle over the very philosophy of science. The principle of Occam's razor suggests that the simplest explanation is usually the correct one. But in the case of the 3I Atlas object, every simple explanation required a leap of faith into the unknown. To claim it was a natural rock required the invention of new types of ice, or impossible densities. To claim it was something else required a confrontation with the idea that we are not the only architects in the galaxy. The data remained cold and indifferent to these human anxieties. The 15% deviation was a hard fact, a number etched into the telemetry of the James Webb Space Telescope, a silent witness to a force that should not have been there. As the object continued its retreat, the search for exotic physics intensified. Some researchers explored the idea of the Yarkovsky effect, where the uneven heating of a rotating body creates a tiny thrust as it re-radiates heat into the dark. But even this well-known phenomenon could not account for the sheer magnitude of the push. The invisible hand was too strong, its influence too persistent. The tension in the academic journals became a reflection of the mystery itself, a clash between the desire for the familiar and the evidence of the extraordinary. We were looking at a skyscraper-sized mass that was behaving like a feather in the wind, a contradiction that challenged the very foundations of celestial mechanics. The halls of academia, usually places of measured consensus, became battlegrounds of theory. Every new paper was a volley in a war of interpretation. Was it a shard of a shattered world, a frozen cloud of primordial gas, or a derelict piece of technology from a civilization that vanished 1 billion years ago? The acceleration was the key, the one piece of evidence that refused to be filed away under the heading of ordinary. It was a message written in the language of motion, a testament to the fact that out in the interstellar deep, the rules of the game are different. The 3I Atlas object was a herald of this new reality, a traveller that carried its own propulsion, in a way that we could see but not yet understand, leaving us to wonder if the wind made of light was the only thing filling its invisible sails. As the 3I Atlas object continued its silent, accelerating retreat, the focus of the global scientific community shifted from the visible to the invisible. Across the planet, the great ears of humanity, the massive radio dishes of the search for extraterrestrial intelligence, and the sprawling networks of the Allen Telescope Array, were pivoted with a collective mechanical grace. These still giants, some nestled in the quiet valleys of West Virginia and others scattered across the high deserts, turned away from their usual targets in the distant star clusters to listen to the passing stranger. The air in the control rooms was thick with a specific kind of tension, a quiet desperation to hear even the faintest whisper from the dark, a narrow band signal that would confirm once and for all that we were not alone. The search was exhaustive, covering billions of channels across the electromagnetic spectrum. The watchers monitored the waterfall displays on their screens, looking for a single, vertical line of light that would indicate a deliberate transmission. They listened for the rhythmic pulse of a beacon, the complex modulation of a data stream, or even the accidental leakage of internal electronics. But as the hours turned into days, the results remained unchanged. The object was profoundly, unnervingly silent. This was the radio silent ping, a state where the absence of a signal became a data point as significant as any discovery. To the radio astronomers, this silence was not merely empty, it was precise. It meant that if the object possessed any active technology, it was either shielded with a perfection that defied our understanding, or it was operating on a level of physics that did not bleed energy into the radio frequencies. However, while the radio spectrum remained a desert of static, the infrared sensors of the James Webb Space Telescope and other ground-based thermal arrays detected something that challenged the very definition of a natural celestial body. They captured a peculiar thermal signature that defied the expectations for a random fragment of interstellar rock. The data revealed that the 3I Atlas object was absorbing and re-radiating solar energy with an efficiency of 98%. In the world of thermodynamics, this is a number that approaches the theoretical limit of a perfect black body, an idealized object that swallows every photon of light that strikes it, reflecting nothing, and then breathes that energy back out into the vacuum as heat with almost no loss. To find such a high degree of efficiency in a naturally occurring object is a statistical and physical anomaly. Most asteroids and comets are messy absorbers. They have varying albedos, reflecting significant portions of sunlight, and their internal compositions create uneven heating and cooling. They are thermally noisy, radiating energy in a chaotic fashion. But the 3I Atlas visitor was different. It acted as a near-perfect thermal sponge. It took the fierce radiation of the sun and converted it into a steady, uniform infrared glow with 98% precision. This suggested a surface of incredible uniformity and a composition that was optimized for the management of energy. The implications of this perfect thermal balance were debated with a growing sense of unease. In the language of physics, a black body is the ultimate absorber, a dark mirror to the universe's light. To see a skyscraper-sized mass behaving this way suggested a surface material that was unlike anything found in the solar system. It was as if the object were draped in a velvet made of carbon nanotubes or some other exotic substance designed to capture every stray photon. This efficiency meant that the object was not just a passive lump of matter being heated by a star. It was a body that interacted with light with a mathematical perfection that felt more like an engineering specification than a product of random collisions in a distant nebula. This thermal perfection also provided a new lens through which to view the object's mysterious acceleration. If the object were truly a near-perfect black body, the way it re-radiated heat could contribute to its movement. The Yarkovsky effect, usually a tiny and negligible force, becomes much more potent when an object is this efficient at processing energy. Yet, even with a 98% efficiency, the numbers still struggled to account for the full 15% deviation in its path. The thermal data confirmed that the object was a master of light and heat, but it did not fully solve the riddle of its invisible hand. It only added another layer to the mystery, painting a picture of a traveller that was blacker than the blackest coal, a shadow moving through the light that refused to reflect the world around it. In the quiet of the observatories, the researchers stared at the thermal maps, seeing a ghost that was visible only by the heat it emitted. The object was a dark void in the visible spectrum, a hole in the stars that only revealed itself through its infrared breath. This was a letter written in the language of heat, a message that spoke of a material science far beyond our current capabilities. Whether it was a natural fluke of interstellar chemistry, a rare hydrogen iceberg, or a shard of a carbon-rich planetary core, or something far more intentional, the 98% efficiency remained a staggering fact. It was a testament to the strangeness of the deep, a reminder that the universe can produce architectures of matter that operate at the very limits of physical possibility. The search for a radio signal had failed, but the thermal search had succeeded in revealing a different kind of signal. The 3i Atlas object was a perfect absorber, a silent and efficient traveller that moved through the solar system like a dark flame. It took the sun's gift of energy and used it with a precision that mocked our own crude machines. As it moved further away, its thermal signature began to fade, the infrared glow dimming as the distance from the sun increased. But the data remained, a permanent record of a body that was too perfect to be easily explained, leaving the watchers to wonder what kind of world could produce a messenger that swallows the light of a star and leaves only a cold, dark silence in its wake. The light that finally reached the spectrometers was a fragmented prism, a collection of spectral lines that served as the chemical fingerprint of the 3i Atlas visitor. This was the moment the veil of distance was truly pulled back, revealing the molecular identity of the stranger with a clarity that silenced the skeptics. As the instruments dissected the reflected sunlight and the object's own infrared glow, they revealed a complexity that defied the simple classification of an interstellar rock. Clinging to a frame the size of a massive urban monolith, the data showed an abundance of complex organic molecules, the very building blocks of life as we understand it. These were not the simple carbon chains found in the cold clouds of the interstellar medium, but sophisticated arrangements of atoms that hinted at a much more fertile and ancient origin. The surface of this skyscraper-sized traveller was a dark, unyielding shell of radiation-hardened carbon, a material that had undergone a profound transformation over the course of its long journey. For millions, perhaps billions of years, the object had been subjected to the relentless bombardment of cosmic rays, high-energy particles and heavy ions that act as a microscopic hammer, shattering simple molecular bonds and reforging them into dense, dark polymers. This process, known as space weathering, had turned the outer layers into a protective armour, a black crust of tholins and amorphous carbon that swallowed the light of the sun and shielded the interior from the harsh, ionizing environment of the void. This was not merely a rock, it was a vaulted chamber, a fortified repository of chemical history. Beneath this carbon shield lay a treasure trove of chemical information, a primordial soup of hydrocarbons, nitriles, and perhaps even amino acids, the precursors to the machinery of biology. These molecules were found in concentrations that suggested a highly organized and concentrated source, as if the object were a shard of a world where the foundations of life had been laid in abundance. This was a chemical library preserved in a tomb of ice and stone, carrying the blueprints of a distant world's biology across the gulfs of time and space. It was a silent record of the conditions that existed in a star system thousands of light years away, a testament to the fact that the recipe for life is a universal constant, written in the same language of atoms across the entire galactic disk. To see such a concentration of organic matter on a single, wandering object is to realize that the ingredients for life are not unique to our small corner of the heavens. They are a universal currency, traded across the interstellar deep by these wandering messengers. The 3i Atlas object was a vessel of potential, a frozen capsule containing the echoes of a foreign evolution, protected by its own dark skin as it navigated the silence between the stars. The spectral lines told a story of a birthplace that was likely rich in water and carbon, perhaps a planetary nursery or a protoplanetary disk, where the chemistry of life was already well underway before this fragment was cast into the dark. The presence of these molecules on an interstellar scale suggests that the galaxy is a vast interconnected laboratory, where the seeds of biology are constantly being scattered and transported by the slow, steady movement of mass. As the data was refined by the most powerful processors on Earth, the chemical complexity appeared even more staggering. The signatures of polycyclic aromatic hydrocarbons, molecules that are often associated with the soot of dying stars and the very foundations of cellular life, were found in concentrations that suggested a highly organized structure. This was not a random accumulation of dust, but a concentrated deposit of organic wealth. The imagery of an urban monolith, a dark tower of alien matter falling through the solar system, became the dominant metaphor in the scientific community. It was a monument to the endurance of chemistry, a silent witness to the fact that even in the absolute zero of space, the building blocks of life can remain intact for eons, waiting for a destination that may never come. The object's interior, insulated by its carbon armour, likely maintained a stable environment for millions of years, allowing these complex molecules to survive the transit between the stars. This concept, often discussed as lithopanspermia, suggests that life or its precursors can survive the journey from one star system to another, hidden within the hearts of rocky voyagers. The 3I Atlas object was the most compelling evidence yet for this theory, a physical bridge connecting the biology of two different star systems. It reminded the observers that the universe is a living, breathing entity, capable of producing complexity even in the most desolate reaches of the vacuum, and that the story of life on Earth may be just one chapter in a much larger galactic narrative. The 3I Atlas object, with its carbon-hardened shell and its interior of primordial soup, stood as a testament to the resilience of the cosmic story. It was a message that required no translation, for the language of chemistry is the same in every corner of the galaxy. By reading the spectral lines, we were reading the history of a distant sun and the potential of a distant world. The stranger was leaving us, but it had left behind a map of its own identity, a chemical blueprint that confirmed our place in a much larger and more vibrant universe. The tomb of ice and stone was moving back into the dark, but the library it contained had already been opened, revealing a narrative of life that spans the very stars themselves. This encounter had transformed the object from a mere curiosity of physics into a profound biological mystery, a dark messenger carrying the secrets of a distant world's birth. Yet, for all the biological potential and chemical complexity detected within its frame, the 3I Atlas object remains fundamentally indifferent to the eyes that track it. As it recedes into the dim light of the outer solar system, it carries no awareness of the stir it has caused, no memory of the star it just rounded, and no concern for the civilization that watched its transit with bated breath. This encounter forces a confrontation with the cold, mathematical indifference of the cosmos, a realm where the only laws that carry any true weight are mass, velocity, and the unyielding curvature of space-time. To the vacuum, this object is not a messenger, nor a mystery, nor a miracle. It is merely a calculation in motion, a collection of atoms following the path of least resistance through a gravitational field. The realization of this apathy can feel like a profound betrayal of the human spirit. We are a species that thrives on narrative, seeking meaning in the movement of the stars and carving our history into the very rocks of our world. We have given names to the constellations, assigned myths to the planets, and designated this specific visitor with a title that suggests a place in our records. But the universe does not acknowledge our names. It does not care that we call our star the sun, or that we seek a sense of purpose in the arrival of an interstellar traveller. To the great dark engine of the galaxy, the 3I Atlas object is a silent fragment of a broken world, a piece of debris ejected from a distant catastrophe that occurred millions of years ago, long before the first human voice ever broke the silence of the Earth. This object is a relic of a tragedy that the universe has already forgotten. It was likely birthed in the death throes of a planetary system, torn from its home by the gravitational upheaval of a dying star or the shattering impact of two worlds colliding in the dark. It is a piece of wreckage, a survivor of a celestial event that left no other record. Yet, in its flight, it displays no trauma and no intent. It moves with a terrifying mechanical precision, a testament to a clockwork machine grinding forward without a driver. The cosmos operates on a scale where the birth and death of entire civilizations are but a flicker in the long, dark night, and the passage of this object is just one more gear turning in an infinite and oblivious mechanism. From the vantage point of the third planet, we watch this grinding machine with a mixture of awe and existential dread. We are tiny sparks of consciousness, brief flashes of light in a 13.8 billion-year-old story, trying to find a reflection of ourselves in the cold stone of the deep. We want the object to be a letter, a deliberate message sent across the void to tell us we are not alone. But the data suggests a much harsher reality. The letter has no sender and no intended recipient. It is a message written in the language of entropy, a testament to the fact that things break, things fall, and things wander forever through the dark. The silence of the 3i Atlas object is not a pause in a conversation. It is the absolute silence of a universe that has nothing to say to us. This mathematical indifference strips away the comforting illusions of our own importance. It reminds us that our lives are brief and our world is small, a fragile island of warmth protected by a thin veil of atmosphere. The object's trajectory, that extreme hyperbolic arc of 1.25, is a physical manifestation of this distance. It is a path that leads away from everything we know, a journey into a void that does not recognize the concept of a home. As the stranger departs, it leaves behind a sense of profound loneliness, a reminder that the vast majority of the universe is composed of cold, dark matter and empty space, entirely unconcerned with the dreams of biological entities. Yet, there is a stark, clean beauty in this apathy. The universe does not need to care about us for it to be magnificent. The very fact that mass and velocity can conspire to bring a piece of a distant world across the light years to our doorstep is a wonder of physics that requires no divine or alien intent. The clockwork machine may be oblivious, but it is also consistent, reliable, and governed by a logic that we can begin to understand. By stripping away our anthropocentric desires, we are left with the raw reality of the cosmos, a place of infinite scale and ancient history, where every atom in our bodies was once forged in the heart of a star, much like the atoms that make up the 3i Atlas object. The philosophical weight of this encounter lies in the tension between our desire for meaning and the universe's refusal to provide it. We are the ones who must provide the meaning. We are the ones who turn a piece of cold debris into a bridge between civilizations, even if that bridge only exists in our own minds. The object is a mirror, reflecting back to us our own curiosity, our own fears, and our own capacity for wonder. It is a silent fragment of a broken world, but in our observation of it, we give it a role in a new story. The machine grinds forward, the gears of gravity and inertia turn, and the tiny sparks of consciousness on the third planet continue to watch, finding gratitude not in the answers they receive, but in the sheer, improbable fact of the encounter itself. In the face of cosmic indifference, the act of witnessing becomes a defiant assertion of our own existence, a way of saying that even in a universe that does not know our names, we are here and we are looking up. The coldness of the vacuum, however absolute, meets its match in the warmth of human perception. While the universe may operate as an unthinking machine, the emergence of the observer introduces a new variable into the equation of existence. The 3i Atlas object has spent millions of years in a state of ontological limbo, a piece of matter with no name, no context, and no audience. It existed only as a series of physical properties, mass, velocity, and spin. But the moment its light was captured by the mirrors on Mauna Loa, it underwent a profound transformation. It was no longer just a stray fragment of a broken world. It became a visitor. It was given a designation, a history, and a place in the collective memory of a sentient species. This is the power of the witness, to take the raw, indifferent data of the cosmos and weave it into the fabric of a story. The timing of this encounter is nothing short of a secular miracle. For tens of millions of years, this object has been falling through the dark, crossing the inconceivable distances between the stars. It began its journey long before the first hominids walked the plains of Africa, and it will continue long after the last traces of our cities have crumbled into dust. Yet, it happened to pass through our small, sun-drenched corner of the heavens at the exact moment, a mere blink in the eye of geologic time, when we possessed the technology to see it. Had it arrived 2 centuries earlier, it would have been an invisible ghost in the night. Had it arrived a few millennia later, we might have been gone. The intersection of its multi-million-year flight and our 100-year window of advanced astronomy is a convergence of staggering precision. This convergence is not a product of chance alone, but of human will. We are the ones who chose to look up. We are the ones who, through centuries of labour and curiosity, learned to grind glass and polish mirrors to capture the faint ancient light of the stars. We built the asteroid-terrestrial impact last alert system not out of a desire for profit, but out of a fundamental need to understand our environment and protect our home. These glass eyes, perched on the highest peaks of the Earth, are the physical manifestation of our desire for connection. They are our way of reaching out into the silence and demanding an answer. By building these instruments, we have turned ourselves into the witness, the entity that gives the universe a reason to be seen. In this role, we give the 3i Atlas object a purpose it never possessed in the void. In the interstellar deep, the object was a letter with no reader, a message sent into a void that could not comprehend it. But in our hands, it becomes a bridge between civilizations. It does not matter that the sender is long dead, or that the message was never intended for us. The act of reading the letter is what creates the connection. We analyse its chemistry, we map its trajectory, and we debate its origins, and in doing so, we turn a random event into a historical testament. We are the ones who decide that this piece of cold debris is important. We are the ones who decide that its passage is a milestone in the history of our species. The significance of the observer lies in this ability to create meaning where none exists. The universe provides the matter, but we provide the significance. This transformation is what separates a random collision of paths from a momentous discovery. When we look at the spectral lines of the stranger and see the building blocks of life, we're not just looking at atoms, we're looking at a reflection of our own origins. We're recognizing a shared heritage that spans the light years. The 3i Atlas object becomes a physical link to a distant sun, a tangible proof that the laws of chemistry and physics that govern our lives are the same laws that govern the furthest reaches of the galaxy. This realization brings a sense of profound gratitude. We are grateful not because the object provided us with easy answers, but because it allowed us to participate in a larger story. It reminded us that we are part of a grander, more complex reality than our daily lives would suggest. The act of witnessing the stranger is a reminder of our own potential as a species. We are the ones who can decode the language of light and gravity. We are the ones who can turn a silent, frozen rock into a testament of universal history. The coldness of the vacuum is still there, and the indifference of the stars remains unchanged, but they are no longer the whole story. As the object recedes, it leaves behind a legacy that is entirely of our making. It will be remembered in our textbooks, debated in our universities, and celebrated in our art. It has been transformed from a ghost in the machine into a permanent fixture of our intellectual landscape. This is the ultimate victory of the observer, to take the fleeting and the indifferent and make it eternal. The 3i Atlas object is a letter that has finally been read, and though the sender is gone, the message has been received. We have stood on the cosmic shoreline and reached out to catch a passing spark, and in that moment of contact, we have proven that even in the vastness of the dark, the act of seeing is an act of creation. The witness has spoken, and the universe is no longer quite so silent. This shared existence is not merely a poetic sentiment, but a physical reality revealed through the cold, hard data of the stranger's transit. The arrival of the 3i Atlas object serves as a profound confirmation that the laws governing our small blue world are the same laws that dictate the movements of the furthest stars. We live in a universe defined by a singular grammar of light and gravity, a consistent set of rules that applies as much to the distant spirals of the Perseus arm as it does to the falling of an apple on Earth. This stranger, composed of the same fundamental elements found in our own bodies and moving according to the same geometric principles that guide our home planets, acts as a physical proof of our interconnectedness. It suggests that the history of our solar system is not an isolated incident, but a single stanza in an epic poem that is being written across the entire breadth of the Milky Way. In this grand narrative, every star is a potential author, casting its own fragments and messages into the dark. Some stars tell stories of fire and destruction, ejecting the shattered remains of worlds into the interstellar medium during the violent throes of their birth or death. Others tell stories of quiet, icy endurance, sending frozen messengers to drift for eons through the void. The 3I Atlas object is one such story, a piece of prose composed of carbon and complex organic molecules, edited by the harsh radiation of the vacuum and finally published in the light of our own star. To look upon it is to realise that we are surrounded by the works of a billion different creators, each star system contributing its own unique data points to a vast, ongoing dialogue of matter and energy. The galaxy is revealed not as a collection of isolated points of light, but as a vast, interconnected tapestry of matter. The space between the stars, once thought to be an empty and desolate wasteland, is shown to be a busy thoroughfare, a place where the debris of one system can eventually become the discovery of another. This tapestry is woven from the invisible threads of gravitational pulls and the luminous needles of starlight, creating a fabric that binds the most distant suns to our own local neighbourhood. Even the loneliest wanderer, a fragment lost in the abyss for millions of years, eventually finds its way to a reader. Our role as a species is to be that reader, to provide the attention and the intellect required to turn a random encounter into a meaningful event. We are the ones who decode the syntax of its trajectory and the vocabulary of its chemical composition. There is a deep and abiding gratitude in this realization, a feeling that transcends the need for specific scientific answers. While many of the object's secrets remain locked behind its unyielding, clean hull, the mere fact of its presence provides a confirmation that we are part of a larger, grander story. We are no longer merely observers of a distant and unreachable spectacle. We are active participants in a galactic exchange. The arrival of the 3I Atlas object tells us that the universe is permeable, that the walls between the star systems are not as solid as they once seemed. It tells us that we belong to a community of matter, a fellowship of atoms that spans the light years, where the journey of a single rock can link the destinies of two different worlds. This sense of shared existence softens the existential dread that often accompanies the study of the deep. If a piece of a distant world can find its way to us, then we are not as alone as the vast distances would suggest. The narrative of the cosmos is one of constant movement and eventual contact. We are a small part of a narrative written in the language of light and gravity, a story where the characters are stars and the plot is the slow, inevitable evolution of the galaxy itself. The 3I Atlas object is a witness to this process, a messenger that carries the signature of a foreign sun into our own house. It reminds us that every element in our bodies was once forged in the same stellar furnaces that created the stranger, making us kin to the very object we track through our telescopes. As we watch the object depart, there is no sense of loss, only a quiet appreciation for the intersection of our paths. The loneliest wanderer has found its first and perhaps only audience, and in that moment of recognition, the tapestry of the universe has been pulled a little tighter. We are the readers of the cosmic letter, the ones who give the wanderer a name and a place in history. This act of reading is what gives the universe its depth, transforming a collection of cold, moving parts into a living, breathing history. We find ourselves standing on the shore of an infinite sea, grateful not for the answers the tide brings, but for the knowledge that the sea is full of stories and that we have finally learned how to listen. The story of the 3I Atlas visitor is now our story too, a permanent thread in the tapestry of human knowledge, woven into the larger narrative of a galaxy that is constantly reaching out to itself across the dark. The visitor is now a ghost, a fading spark receding into the deep cold of the outer solar system. It has passed the orbit of Neptune and is currently crossing the scattered disk, heading back toward the heliopause from which it first emerged. The sun, once a blinding furnace that scoured its surface, has shrunk back into a distant, piercing point of light. The 3I Atlas object is returning to the absolute zero of the interstellar medium, carrying with it the heat it gathered during its brief transit, a final breath of infrared energy that will eventually dissipate into the dark. Though it is physically departing, it leaves behind a permanent mark on the human psyche, a scar of knowledge that has forever altered our relationship with the heavens. We're no longer the same species that watched the first stars come out in the ancient past. We have become the keepers of a new reality, one where the space between the stars is not a void, but a reservoir of secrets. The stranger has proven that the galaxy is in a state of constant silent exchange, and that we are currently living through an era of unprecedented discovery. The 15% deviation in its path and the 98% efficiency of its thermal absorption are no longer just anomalies in a database. They are the foundations of a new branch of science, a testament to the fact that our local laws of physics are only a small part of a much larger, more complex truth. The legacy of the 3I Atlas object is found in the renewed urgency with which we now scan the dark. We have learned that the radio-silent ping of a passing monolith can be more informative than 1,000 broadcasts, and that the chemistry of a distant world can be read in the faint light of a tumbling rock. This encounter has taught us the value of the watch, the necessity of maintaining our glass eyes on the mountain peaks and our golden mirrors in the Lagrange points. We must continue to be the witness, for the next letter may already be falling through the heliopause, carrying a message that we cannot afford to miss. The universe is a vast library, and we have only just begun to read the first few lines of its most distant volumes. As the stranger vanishes into the interstellar night, it reminds us that the quest for understanding is a collective endeavour. It requires the labour of thousands, the curiosity of millions, and the support of a global community that values the pursuit of truth above all else. The journey of the 3I Atlas object has come to an end in our neighbourhood, but the story of our exploration is only just beginning. We are the ones who must carry the torch of inquiry into the next decade and beyond, ensuring that when the next wanderer arrives, we are ready to receive it. The silence of the void is no longer a source of dread, but an invitation. It is a call to look further, to think more deeply, and to build even greater instruments to peer into the heart of the galaxy. We find ourselves standing at the edge of a new frontier, where the boundaries of the solar system are no longer the limits of our world. The 3I Atlas visitor was a herald of this new age, a silent messenger that told us, through its very existence, that the story of life and matter is far grander than we ever dared to conceive. It has left us with a sense of purpose, a drive to continue the search for meaning in a cosmos that is as indifferent as it is magnificent. If you found this journey through the depths of the interstellar void compelling, consider supporting our exploration by subscribing to the channel and joining our community on Patreon, where we continue to decode the messages sent from the furthest reaches of the cosmos. Together, we can ensure that the glass eyes never close and that the human witness remains vigilant, ready to catch the next spark of light that emerges from the infinite dark. The letter has been read, the trajectory has been mapped, and the stranger is gone, but the wonder it inspired will remain as long as there are those who dare to look up and ask what lies beyond the next star. We are the readers of the cosmic story, and the next chapter is waiting to be discovered in the silent, frozen expanses of the deep.